Okay, so
All right, bro. So we're talking about today.
let's talk about maybe we talk about something more on the Malaysian angle. What do you think about that?
Sure.
No, I mean, being an entrepreneur in Malaysia, why is it super good and why is it super bad?
Which one do you want to start?
You can start anyone. I can do one that's super good one, then we can always jump in super bad one, right? Yeah. So being an entrepreneur in Malaysia, maybe Deric, why don't you share as a Malaysian, right? As a Malaysian Chinese, what is it like being an entrepreneur in Malaysia, man?
I think we can go on very very long, but if I could just sum it up, right, it's just two things only. Number one, obviously, if you want to talk about the Chinese angle, obviously we don't get all the benefits. I think freaking 50, 60, 70% of grants out there are only meant
But share people, what do you mean Chinese angle? Malaysia, they may not know.
For those who don't know, in Malaysia, we are the minority race. We pay the same amount of taxes, but we're not considered the landowners, right? So even though we're Malaysians by passport, we are like second-class citizens in the country itself, right? Let's put it that way, right? And it's the truth. It's the truth, right? If we buy houses, we don't get discounts, right? If we don't get full funded scholarships by certain organizations. When we start businesses, we don't have the same rights to get a shit ton of their grants and loans. Right? I think 80% out there, 70%. I don't know the exact figure, but my point is a lot of it out there we don't qualify for. So that's that angle. But so that's the Malaysian Chinese angle, which isn't that great, but it's okay. It's bad, but it's okay, right? So now we're talking about what's worse. I was in UK studying, right? And I was a student VC there, dealt with a lot of startup founders. People just like ourselves, starting up businesses, looking for funding. Maybe some more established than us, some earlier than us, but mostly around pre-seed or seed stage level. And one thing I can see, right, is, and in general as well, people are just more hungry. People are very hungry. They're always upskilling themselves. They're always doing something. They're always learning something. I think out of the people you meet, right, probably 5 of them will be, trying to do something that's different, trying to study more, go for further studies. They want to learn up a new skill. They want to do a business. If they want to do a business, right, they'll just straight up go and learn it and do it. Right? And then they will then do whatever it takes to raise funding, whatever it is. So the whole infrastructure there, I would feel, the whole ecosystem, people are just more, and obviously people are more dynamic like that. And you got people all over Europe flying in to raise funding, do startups, maybe also because of the funding side of things, so there's a lot more funding, so the investment per capita is a lot higher over there. Everyone gets more funding, right? Just for an identical idea in UK versus in Malaysia, right, your likelihood of raising funds in UK is probably arguably higher as well. So maybe that would affect the people's mindsets in Malaysia as well, making people to be maybe more comfortable, more laid back, more chill, right? I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's just the ecosystem. When there's this very famous saying, show me your best friends and I'll tell you who you're going to be in 5 years, right? So if you're in an environment where people are more laid back, less gung-ho, less go-getter, right? It will affect you a little bit, I guess. And also, I guess, when it comes to talents, hiring talents, it's harder to find super good talents when majority are more laid back. What do you think of that?
That's the thing. I think fundamentally Malaysia as a country, I must say, is actually a very good place, right? It's very good because you have I think fundamentally it boils down to one thing only. Malaysia is good for business because it has a very educated workforce that is quite cost affordable. It's not super cheap, crazy cheap like Cambodia or Vietnam, but it's still affordable compared to Singapore. And we speak English, we're very well educated. So we have a very good labor force over here, right? But we do struggle from one thing, and going back to what I said earlier, which is we are in this so-called comfort zone, right? Whereby we are not, it's called the middle income trap, right? We are not a high net worth country, developed country, but we're not also like a developing country as bad as, on the lower tier like Cambodia, for example, right? We are fairly well off, but we are stuck in this trap whereby our incomes haven't been rising, productivity hasn't been rising, and we're stuck doing the same thing.
And we don't have the incentive to innovate because we're just comfortable.
Because we're comfortable still. Right? Whereas South Korea or Japan 30 years ago had the incentive to innovate, they were freaking bombed. Japan was bombed by a nuclear bomb. Of course, you have incentive.
They have to be good, right? They have
Right?
to be,
South Korea, Singapore had to innovate because Singapore was a mud swamp. Either they're gonna die or they
and they're a little country in the middle of. They're like Israel in many sense, right?
in some
Country
sense.
in the middle of a lot of Islamic countries.
Yeah, but I mean, taking out the Islamic side as well, ultimately is they are just have no resources. They have to survive. They had to prove it themselves. Whereas Malaysia is very blessed.
Yes, we're very blessed.
It's very good, but that's what they call the curse of oil,
Curse
right?
of oil,
If you
yes.
give it, or curse of resources. You give it a ton of resources, you're gonna be comfortable. You just will not
just-
progress, right? So I think Malaysia is in that scenario where we have struggled to progress, but we are comfortable. So, and it's hard. Then when you're comfortable, it's hard to get action.
But then again, would it be fair for you to say it's comfortable when a lot of Malaysians today are still living in poverty?
So that's the thing.
Living paycheck to paycheck.
That's the thing, right? When I say comfortable, meaning even at the leadership level, right? Companies are comfortable, bosses are comfortable, big people with money are comfortable, right? And when they are comfortable and don't have pressure to innovate, it trickles down to all the staff below and the people below, right? One boss or company can have 10,000 workers. This one guy, if he's comfortable, he may say, okay, I don't want to innovate, I just want to do the same thing. And therefore, he doesn't trickle that effect down to his staff below, right? So I think that's a big difference, right? People in poverty is everywhere, right? It's everywhere. But we have what we call a middle income. We have a big middle income. But the middle income is not translating to high income. They're just middle income and they work corporate jobs and that's that. That's that, right? I think it boils down to like support from corporates, support from governments to really build the ecosystem. That's why there's no ecosystem. How do you create a chicken egg if there's no nest in the first place? You know what I mean?
I think the government had a ton of initiatives with Magic and MDAC and all that to try and boost entrepreneurship and startups in Malaysia. Relative to a lot of our neighboring countries. Obviously, don't compare to Singapore because it's a whole different ballgame over there. We've tried going to Singapore and we know how crazy excited those people are for new ideas, right? They literally want to give you money to go over there. But if you're comparing to our peers in Philippines and Vietnam, these are all developing countries that are arguably chasing up with Malaysia very, very fast. They also don't have very crazy startup support.
You can't compare to them. Of course, Malaysia would have more startup support than Afghanistan. I mean, but why are we comparing Afghanistan,
I'm comparing
Philippines,
to
and Vietnam? Same thing. What we shouldn't be comparing to them.
Why?
Malaysia is fundamentally more developed than Vietnam. It's more developed than Philippines. I mean, if we can always compare to a country that's worse than us and say, hey,
No, Vietnam
yeah.
is chasing up, right? I mean, if you compare the
Vietnam's chasing up, yes, because they are coming from a lower base. It's faster.
No, the growth rate is faster, but
And Malaysia's growth rate
if you
is
compare
slower.
the GDP per capita, is it
We are better. We are much better. than-
much better, like 10 times better?
Per capita, yes, we are better than all of them. Like double,
right?
or something,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, or triple,
I'm not
right?
too sure, you can check later.
Yeah. No, I mean, so ultimately, I mean, Indonesia GDP, right? 3,000 US dollars.
Per capita, yeah. No, but then
Malaysia's
if you
11,
compare it to
12,000.
the support they provide to startups, would you say Malaysia provides pretty good support?
All I know is Malaysia has been struggling to build good startups and good entrepreneurs. When you say provide support, I don't see it. All I know is we're stuck in the middle income trap. We're not progressing, our GDP is not progressing, our salaries are
I
not
think
progressing.
several years ago they were giving a lot of grants to startups doing tech startups. Now lesser so, right? They always, whenever you talk to them, they always want to see like people who have raised certain amounts of funds. They don't really support the pre-seed, like early stage guys like us.
Unfortunately, we don't have enough money to give out small grants.
right.
We can afford to give out, because they used to give a lot of small grants, a lot of them failed.
A lot of them fail, right?
Right?
Yeah.
A lot failed. They're like, wow, this is just burning too much money and we can't tell. We cannot assess these startups. Okay, fine, let's just do the bigger ones and let's play it safe. Right?
Whereas in Singapore, they're just throwing money everywhere.
They have a lot of money. They have a lot of money. Singapore's one of the richest countries in the world. Of course they have a lot of money.
different ballgame.
Now, so okay, so I mean, so we talked a lot of bad, I mean, mostly about Malaysia. What's the good about Malaysia? I mean, I did mention one thing, which is educated workforce that's cheap, right? But what else is good, you know, like to really build a team and build a company in Malaysia, right? To be an entrepreneur in Malaysia.
You want to go first? You see I'm struggling with
Oh wow, isn't that bad? No, I will say one thing. Okay, look, what I've heard from a lot of businessmen, and even senior businessmen who've been around Malaysia for 50 years, right? What they say is Malaysia is a very peaceful country, right? Malaysia is a land of opportunity if you know it, look for opportunities. So I used to tell people Malaysia is so bad that it's so good to some level, right? What it means is there's just opportunities everywhere. You know what I mean? Opportunities to innovate, to grow, to develop.
The part where you say Malaysia is so bad, it's so good. Were you trying to say that? Are you trying to say that because people are more laid back, it's easier for you to stand out?
That's one angle. You can always go an angle of do you want to be first in the last class or last in the first class? I think we had this conversation where I would rather be first in the last class than last in the first class. Well, of course, that's something else.
No, because if you compare startups or any form of new initiatives, right, it's always abroad. Like abroad, whatever idea you might have, right, abroad, someone will.
Then if you notice, a lot of startups in Malaysia are actually local first in Malaysia. They just compete in Malaysia.
Yeah.
And you gotta remember one thing, Malaysia is a place where there's still money. So if you can do a startup, you can capture this money, you can launch a reasonably... Okay, Malaysia is a place where you can platform your base, right?
Because the cost is low.
Cost is low, and also, do you want to be among the best of the best to fight on your...
It's very competitive.
You want to be among Malaysians, right?
Yeah, because you then can stand out better, can compete. And obviously, you have better. The way you're making it sound like Malaysians are so weak. No, I think you gotta make it clear,
Okay,
right? You gotta make it
yeah.
clear. It's not that Malaysians are weak. It's just that, like we mentioned already, right? There are lesser people able to take those risks, and we are blessed enough to be able to take this opportunity of ours and stand out and compete with them. Whereas in US, in Australia, in Singapore, the quality of life is in general a lot better.
Yes.
Governments are giving grants. It's a lot more competitive on the higher level, on the entrepreneurship level, where people are competing like crazy. In Malaysia, lesser people competing on new ideas. That's why. I would say that's the thing, right? People still need to put food on the table. If they don't work, they just can't survive. A lot of them are like that. And
no, we have a big middle class. And funny enough you say this because I did hear from Singaporean friends saying that in Singapore I wouldn't want to start a business because my life in my corporate job is so comfortable.
That's true.
Okay? If you say we are comfortable, they're even more comfortable. Well, they're more comfortable now. Last time they used to be very crazy, right? Now Singapore, I guess maybe is slowing down, but they're very comfortable already now. Malaysia is, we call ourselves comfortable, a lot of people hate their jobs, and so they want to turn to entrepreneurship. It's just whether can they do it or not. But we have a lot of people who are not in comfortable positions, or
but they just don't have
suffering
a choice.
positions. Sorry, not want to say they don't have a good job.
Suffering, that's a very big term.
You're working in a bank, you're earning a decent wage, you're not suffering, that's comfortable. But a lot of them are not even working in companies where they are suffering. They work in small companies and not
What's the average
growing.
salary in Malaysia? Household income? That's like
I spoke to my mom, bro, right? 30 years, 20 years ago, the salary, okay, fresh grad salary, let's just say, was, and you use fresh grad as a benchmark, right?
That, yeah.
2.5k,
2.5, right?
2.4k.
Right now?
That's 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, right? And now, dude, maybe it went up by a few hundred ringgit.
Yeah.
At the most, 3,000 bucks.
Whereas inflation has been going up by 2 to 3% every single year.
Yeah.
Your salary is just like that. So
Yeah.
and also I think just to add on to your point about Singapore, right? Singapore, they are winning on both ends. They are doing very well for entrepreneurs and they're doing very well for staffs as well. So they have the luxury of choosing whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Every Singaporean today has like a 50k grant at their disposal if they wanted to do a business.
So okay, for Malaysians who are hearing this as well, right? What can Malaysia do? What's the opportunity to make Malaysia do better, to improve more, right? Or even for foreigners hearing this, why should they come to Malaysia and how can they help Malaysia progress? Apart from exploiting labor or saying things are cheap labor, what's the opportunity here? You know, Malaysia, to me, right, we are ripe for innovation because we have a resource-rich country. We are looking to diversify. Government wants to diversify, right? Our breakdown is about 30%, 33% electronics, right? We diversified successfully to electronics. We have a good 11% of revenue from petrol. Actually, people think,
Which
we're
is
an
very
oil company.
small, which is very
No,
small.
but it's a significant chunk, petrol, right? And
People always think it's like 40%,
significant.
but it's actually
no,
very small.
yeah. Our main is electronics, really, right?
Yes.
Which is massive, right? Then we got petrol, and then we got palm oil and stuff. And if I recall correctly, this was our export revenue, right? Yeah. So, government still derives a big chunk of its revenue from oil. I mean, 10, 15, even used to be 15%. It used to be 18% or something like that of government budget was from oil revenue. And because oil dipped like crazy back in 4 or 5 years ago, they lost like what, 20, I read the numbers, 25 billion lost to oil revenue. And the government budget as a whole was 250 billion. So 10% of the budget was lost purely because of a price dip in oil. Right, 10% of a budget. So and it hasn't risen up since, right? And that's why I implemented GST. But government is looking very, very hard to diversify to other sources. They just haven't been good at it. MDEC, Cradle, Magic. Unfortunately, you can tell by the change in CEO or leadership as well. I don't know what's happening, but you haven't heard much. We are in Malaysia, I live in KL. MDEC's been around for 5-6 years. Personal experience, I haven't been to, I mean, I've been there a few times and that's it. They put it so far away. There's no ecosystem there, unfortunately. I don't know why. I've been part of the few magic programs, there's some boot camps here and there.
But the free ones, right? Where
okay, and let's talk about their budget. How much are they given a year in budget? Okay, I think 10 to 20 million ringgit in budget.
you check the amount that they have, 10 to 20 million ringgit.
Ringgit for all the whole thing.
For MDEC. That's crazy.
Cradle had about 15 million ringgit for investment. 15 million ringgit.
Just for
I did the maths for investment,
right? Operations
right?
is another.
Yeah, so I did the maths. Investments, 15 million ringgit. Now, if every investment is 300,000, then you do the maths. That's it, right? So you got, I don't know, like about 50 startups, right? So I think that's throughout the whole year, right? So it's not a big number. I mean, if you just want to calculate it, right? And that's for one whole year. So and that doesn't include some of their investments where they make 1 million ringgit investment as well, right? So I think the bottom line is Malaysia's a good place because we need innovation and we are welcoming innovation. That's the thing. We welcome innovation.
And people are also very not as risk averse relative to other countries. We are open to trying new things.
Yes,
we have quite an okay early adopters curve. So people come in first before the rest follows. Arguably compared to Singapore lesser, but still it's not that bad. It's still not that bad.
I don't know about that. I do know that Malaysian mindset generally is people are very risk averse. A lot of the senior people
to try new things,
people,
not to launch business, to try it out. If it's free, there's no cost for it. People would generally do it.
Yeah. So I think bottom line, your experiences in Malaysia.
Bottom line,
what's the conclusion? Would you recommend someone to come?
Start
a business? Hey,
when you say someone, you mean when foreigners?
Anyone.
Like someone
Start a
from Korea to
business.
come over to Malaysia?
Yeah, if anyone can choose any start business
Why
anywhere in
would
the
someone
world,
come
right?
to Malaysia when Singapore is just a few hours
Singapore's so
away?
expensive. You're dead already by that.
Expensive to who?
Expensive for everyone in general.
That's
When
why
you come to Malaysia, your money is
higher
times 3 times
Malaysian
4.
talents. Is that the only concern here? Because money is there, investments are there, right? Revenue up, the top line is there.
Raise funds there, but sell your base
Exactly,
operations in
right?
Malaysia.
So that's the
right?
best hybrid. But exactly.
Yeah. And we speak good English. I won't say the same for Vietnam and Indonesia. Yeah, it's cheap, but you don't speak English. It's a big problem there. So that's why Malaysia actually is a very nice sweet spot, if I can say it really, right? It's a very nice sweet spot where you got good quality talent, reasonably good infrastructure, and low cost. It has the balance of everything. Cheap
But investments
and
are
good
all in Singapore. So why would they want to come here?
No, you set up your base
Is it
operations here.
solely for cost saving?
When you say Singapore, right, there's
So if it's solely for cost saving
fundraising.
sake, right, I would have went to the Philippines. They speak good English as well.
Infrastructure is not as good. So Malaysia, so what you call, has a good balance of infrastructure, support, ecosystem, talent. They all comes together quite nicely and it's cost affordable. So I say Malaysia is cheap and good enough. Some places are cheap and like not so good. You're sacrificing a lot of things, right? And that's talking Southeast Asia. Now you talk to any other continent in the world. Okay, continent-wise, I think it's different, but Malaysia and Singapore is a good base of operations for launching throughout the region. So a lot of people do, right? Depends again on business. Southeast Asia, right?
What is there this special distinction between Southeast Asia and Asia actually?
I mean, something for another time
Yeah,
also,
that's
right?
right.
But ultimately, you have to understand the region, and if you're based in the region, you can fly around the region easily, move around faster, that kind of thing, right? You wanna be having your team in Brazil or in
No, I'm talking
Europe.
Asia.
Asia is fine, but Asia is too massive. China alone deserves its own market. It's so
Let's
big.
put China away. You're talking
Okay,
Hong
India
Kong,
alone deserves its own
Taiwan,
market.
Korea, and Japan.
Hong Kong, Taiwan, and all that. Those are a very unique market in its own right. That just three of them you can survive on their own. And if you're based in Hong Kong and Taiwan, why don't you just target China straight away?
Are we not? No, because China as a whole entirely different.
No, but people based in China will often target Taiwan and Singapore, Taiwan and Hong Kong as well.
No, we're talking us.
From Malaysia. For any company
No, let's say
based
you start a business in Malaysia, you want to target someone in Philippines. What's the difference between targeting someone in Philippines versus targeting someone in Hong Kong?
Hong Kong,
Like, why is
China,
there
right?
this special exclusivity?
Actually, no, you're right. No, actually, and that's the thing. Actually, you're right. A good point as well. Because Malaysia is a lot of Chinese people as
I
well.
can speak Cantonese better than I can speak Filipino, right? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. No, actually, you raise a good point, right? Yeah. So it is actually a very good base to launch towards China and Hong Kong as well. And someday we can discuss another topic about why Malaysia is a good base to launch to a lot of Asian countries,
Yes.
right?
And
And,
the
we got
time zone is a
Indians
big
who
thing.
can speak India. That's right. You know what I mean, right?
Tamil, yeah, Hindi,
Tamil, Hindi.
yeah.
So you got a lot of multiculturalism here, and they can expand out. So awesome. Good stuff. Good stuff.